It's 2 a.m. Your body is completely done. Every muscle has been asking you to stop for hours. But your brain? Your brain is running a full sprint. It's replaying a conversation from 6 hours ago, word for word, tone for tone, searching for something you might have said differently. It's drafting a response to an email that hasn't even arrived yet. It's running through everything that could go wrong tomorrow, then stress testing each one. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a part of you that knows rationally that none of this is helping. But you can't stop. You literally cannot turn it off. Now cut to 50,000 years ago. A human being sits at the outer edge of a sleeping camp. The fire is down to embers. Every other member of the group is finally resting after a brutal day. But this person? Their brain is running, scanning the tree line, listening, cataloging sounds, running every scenario of what could go wrong before dawn. Here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. These two people have the exact same brain. Not a similar brain, not a brain built on the same rough template. The same brain. And that brain was not created by accident. It was built deliberately by 300,000 years of human survival pressure. Today, we are going to trace exactly when this brain was engineered, why your tribe could not have survived without it, and why, once you understand its original design, it stops feeling like a curse. Welcome to Cytopsy, where we don't just tell you what you're experiencing. We trace it all the way back to where it actually began. Let's get into it. Here is something that most people never learn about early human communities. They lived in groups of approximately 30 to 150 people. Everyone knew everyone. Resources were shared. Survival was a collective project. And within those groups, there was a problem that had no obvious solution. Most people needed to sleep deep, genuine, restorative sleep. They needed to be rested for hunting, for foraging, for building, for the physical work that daylight demanded. But if everyone slept at the same time, the group was exposed. An ambush by a rival group, a predator working the edges of the camp, an environmental shift that nobody caught because nobody was awake to catch it. Evolution's solution was both elegant and permanent. Not everyone in the group needed to be the same neurological type. A functional group needed a specific subset of people, a small percentage whose nervous systems were wired differently, people who never fully powered down, who stayed alert while others rested, who processed the environment continuously, scanning for anything that didn't fit. Evolutionary researchers call this the Sentinel Function. The trait at the core of this function, what modern psychology calls sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS, appears in approximately 15 to 20% of all humans, across every culture, every continent, every era of recorded history. But here is the number that makes this undeniable. SPS doesn't just appear in humans. It has been documented in over 100 animal species, from fruit flies to wolves to primates. And in evolutionary biology, when a trait persists across that many species, across that much time, there is only one conclusion that science will draw. It was maintained on purpose. Evolution kept this brain type alive because groups that had sentinels survived longer than groups that didn't. The entire tribe's safety depended on these individuals existing. The sentinel wasn't valued for their daytime productivity. They were valued for their nighttime vigilance. Their hypervigilance was not a flaw in the system. It was the system. Now let's talk about what is actually happening inside this brain. Because the science here is both precise and, if you're watching this, very likely deeply validating. There are two neurological systems that define the sentinel experience. The first is the default mode network, the DMN. In most brains, the DMN activates during downtime, when you are resting, not engaged with anything in particular, mind wandering, daydreaming, the DMN switches on. It is the brain's idle mode, its resting state. In the sentinel brain, the DMN works differently. Research consistently shows that in brains with high sensory processing sensitivity, the default mode network remains significantly more active even during external engagement with the world. The brain never actually idles. This is why you can be sitting in a meeting following the conversation, doing everything that is outwardly expected of you, and there is still a second internal track running underneath. analyzing, filing things away, making connections that nobody asked you to make. Your brain is running two simultaneous operating systems all the time, and one of them does not have an off switch. The second system is the amygdala, the brain's dedicated threat detection center. In the sentinel brain, the amygdala has a lower activation threshold than it does in the average brain. It fires in response to subtler cues, a slight shift in someone's tone, an ambiguous look from across a room, a feeling with no clear source that something is not quite right. To most brains, these signals are noise, data below the threshold worth registering. To the sentinel brain, they are information, specific, important, actionable information. Your brain is not broken. It is running a threat detection algorithm that was calibrated for an environment where missing a subtle signal could get your entire group killed overnight. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed. The only issue, and we'll get to this, is the environment it's currently running in. So how do you know if this is you? Here are 5 signs, and for each one, I want to give you both the modern experience, what it feels like to live with this, and the ancient function underneath it. Because every one of these traits that has probably cost you something was being paid forward for hundreds of thousands of years to keep other people alive. Sign 1. You replay conversations long after they've ended. You know exactly what this is. Hours after a conversation, sometimes days, you are still running it back, reconstructing the other person's internal state from the words they chose, the pause before they answered, the specific phrasing of something that might have meant nothing or might have meant everything. Most people assume this is anxiety, or overthinking, or a neurotic habit they failed to break. The ancient function was something entirely different. In a group of 30 to 150 people where social stability was survival infrastructure, the Sentinel was the group's social intelligence hub. They tracked every relationship, every alliance, every subtle shift in group dynamics before it became visible to anyone else. When someone was behaving slightly differently before they had acted on whatever was driving that difference, the Sentinel noticed. And that early notice gave the group time to respond. Replaying conversations was not rumination. It was social threat analysis, and it protected people who never knew it was protecting them. Sign 2. Crowded or chaotic environments drain you significantly faster than they drain the people around you. You have probably been in situations where other people seem energized by noise, crowd, and stimulation, or at least entirely unbothered by it. And you leave those same situations feeling like you've been physically wrung out. The reason is that you are processing more data than they are. The sentinel brain takes in more environmental input, more sound, more social cues, more movement, because that is what it was built to do. In the ancient forest, this meant hearing a branch snap from 40 meters, noticing the way animals moved had shifted, catching environmental details that protected everyone downstream. In a modern open-plan office with glass walls and ambient noise, it means processing 8 conversations simultaneously when you are only trying to attend to 1. You are not weak. You are running on a broader signal bandwidth than the people around you. The exhaustion is the cost of the capacity, not a flaw in the system. Sign 3. You read people accurately and quickly, often before they've said anything. You walk into a room and you know. You know when something is wrong between 2 people who are performing that everything is fine. You know when confidence is a performance. You know when the person who says, "I'm fine," is not fine. And you knew it before they finished the sentence. And because you've been doing this for as long as you can remember, you often assume everyone else can do it too. They cannot. In the ancient group, social cohesion was survival infrastructure. Understanding who was loyal, who was under stress, who was beginning to fracture before it became visible to the rest of the group was the Sentinel's most critical function. The ability to read emotional and social states accurately, faster than conscious reasoning could explain, was not a soft skill. It was the early warning system for the entire community's social stability. What you experience as a quiet, sometimes uncomfortable knowing is the residue of that function running in your brain today. Sign 4. You absorb and carry other people's emotional states as if they were your own. Someone close to you is having a difficult day, and somehow you are also having a difficult day, not because of anything happening in your own life, because theirs crossed into yours. You leave a heavy conversation, and the weight of it sits in your chest for hours, sometimes for days. The neuroscience here is precise. The sentinel brain shows elevated mirror neuron activation. Mirror neurons are the cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. In the sentinel, observing someone's grief does not produce intellectual understanding of their grief. It produces a neurological simulation of that grief inside your own body. The same brain regions light up. You are not imagining their pain. Your brain is modeling it physically. In the ancient group, this was an extraordinary capacity. The sentinel didn't just understand that someone was struggling, they experienced a version of it. This made them the group's most accurate social modeler, the person most equipped to know what was needed and when. The cost, in a modern world with no natural limits on how many people's emotional states you are exposed to, is a kind of continuous emotional labor that most people around you never see and cannot fully understand. Sign 5. Even in objectively safe environments, you cannot fully relax. There is always a low hum, a background process that never quite goes quiet, even when you're on holiday, even when you're with people you love, even when, by every rational measure, everything is fine. There is a part of your brain quietly running its scan, asking, but is it though? This is not anxiety as dysfunction. This is the sentinel brain doing its job. In the ancient environment, the sentinel who fully relaxed was the sentinel who had stopped protecting the group. And the most dangerous moment for any community was the moment its alarm system decided everything was safe. Your brain was not designed for complete peace. It was designed for managed vigilance. The exhaustion you feel from never being fully off that exhaustion is real. It is valid. It deserves acknowledgement. But it is not weakness. It is the cost of running the most sophisticated threat detection system that human evolution ever produced. Here is the thing nobody tells you about the sentinel. They were not the weakest member of the tribe. They were the infrastructure. The hunters could go out because the sentinel had already read the environment as safe enough. The children could play because the sentinel was watching the perimeter. The leaders could make decisions because the sentinel had already been tracking the group's internal dynamics and knew where the cracks were forming. Every single person in that group depended on the sentinel without fully understanding what they were depending on. Sound familiar? The problem is not the brain. The problem is the mismatch. You inherited a threat detection system calibrated for an environment of genuine, intermittent physical danger. And you are running it in the modern world where the predators are unanswered emails, performance reviews, and the ambiguity of a message left on read for 3 hours. The hardware is ancient, the environment is not, and nobody updated the firmware in between. History is full of people who showed every sign of having this brain, the depth of processing, the hyper-awareness, the emotional range, the inability to let things rest until they were understood. And what we know about many of them is that when they found the right context, the right environment, the right role, the right problem to turn their system toward the same traits that made ordinary life harder, became the entire source of their contribution. This is not a coincidence. This is the sentinel brain, running the way it was built to run in a context that finally matched its calibration. So what do you actually do with this? 3 principles. These are not affirmations, and they are not generic self-help advice. Each one is built on the evolutionary logic we have just covered. Principle 1. Give the sentinel a designated watch. Your brain scans continuously because it has not been given a clear signal that the watch is complete. In the ancient world, dawn brought that signal. Visibility returned, the group assessed the camp, the threat window closed for another cycle. Modern life has no equivalent signal, so the scan runs all day. The practical response? Schedule 15 minutes of intentional review each day. A structured time when you do the scanning. Deliberately write the concerns down, run the scenarios, let the sentinel do its work on paper rather than in the background of everything else. When the scan fires outside of that window, you now have something to say to your own nervous system. We already did this. Stand down. This works not because it tricks your brain, but because it works with the Sentinel's logic. The watch has been done. The threat window is closed. Resume. Principle 2. Learn to translate the signal, not suppress it. When your amygdala fires at a 2-hour text silence, it is running the same biological response it would run for an approaching predator. The signal is real. The classification is wrong. When you feel the threat response activate in a low-stakes situation, the useful question is not, why am I like this? The useful question is this actually dangerous, or is my ancient alarm system misclassifying modern data? You are not trying to make the signal stop. You are learning to read it correctly. The system is not broken. It is running on outdated threat categories. Your job is to be the interpreter between your ancient hardware and your modern environment. Principle 3. Use the capacity on purpose. The Sentinel's hyper-awareness is an asset in strategy, leadership, creative work, emotional intelligence, long-range planning, and any situation where reading what others miss is the actual job. The problem is not the capacity. The problem is deploying it at full intensity 24 hours a day on situations that do not require it. You do not need Sentinel-level surveillance to order from a menu. You do need it to read a room before a critical conversation, to catch a problem in a complex plan that everyone else has walked past, or to do the kind of deep, connected, multi-layered work that your brain was specifically built to do. The capacity does not need to go away. It needs to be directed deliberately and rested when it is not in use. Your brain does not need to be fixed. It needs to be understood. You were not born broken. You were not born too sensitive, too intense, too aware of things that other people seem to walk past without noticing. You were born a sentinel, a brain type that human communities literally could not have survived without. The trait that has made your life simultaneously richer and harder, the seeing, the feeling, the knowing. The inability to turn off was not an accident of your particular neurology. It was selected, maintained, carried forward across 300,000 years because the world needed people like you in it. The problem is not your design. The problem is the mismatch between the world you were built for and the one you are currently running in. And once you understand your ancient wiring, once you stop fighting what you are and start learning to work with it, something shifts. Not immediately, not completely, but the specific exhaustion of fighting yourself starts to lift. And you begin to see the brain you have not as the thing that's been holding you back, but as the thing you've never quite had the framework to use. Before you go, I want to know one thing. Drop a comment below. Which of the 5 signs fits your life most closely? Just the number 1 through 5. I read them. And knowing which ones land hardest shapes what this channel covers next. And if Cytopsy is giving you something that other channels haven't, subscribe. Because we're only getting started. Next video, we covered the brain type that protects the group from the outside. Next, we go inside the ancient brain that felt everything the group felt and held it for them. Why the tribe needed someone who could do that, and what it costs to be that person in 2026. I'll see you there.